Alright, we are back with a new video, and today we are once again updating the power rankings for Big Brother 24 towards the end of week 2. Now I am recording this on Tuesday, July 19th, so I will be mainly including events that have happened up until that point. And this has been a mostly interesting week of the show, especially with what happened at the eviction on Thursday night and what has happened since then. So there's quite a bit of gameplay to talk about here. And I feel like at this point, this is still a pretty fluid game, especially with stuff that has happened in recent days, where it feels like a lot of relationships are shifting and dynamics are moving around. And I feel like coming into next week, I feel like a lot of what's going to happen will depend a lot on who wins HOH. But then again, I feel like you can say that about any season Big Brother early on. And plus, there's also the Bessie twist, which we don't entirely know about yet, but that could also affect some things moving forward. But I'm just going to be looking at what we have to work with right now. So there are 15 players to rank here, and let's get right into the list. So starting off at number 16, we have the player who left the game this week, and here we have Paloma, the first boot of the season. And obviously, it was a bit unexpected for her to leave the game so early, especially with what has happened to her in terms of mental health. It seems as if she's left the game due to mental health reasons, and some of that was based on actions and behavior she was demonstrating in the last couple of days before leaving. However, it definitely does recontextualize some of the stuff that she was doing early on in the game. Now, I did note early on how she was someone who was the most active player during the first week, and obviously that led to her being in a pretty strong position. However, even at the time, I did question how sustainable that really was, and while I didn't expect it to come crumbling down this quickly, I thought that, like in the coming weeks, that she probably would have emerged as a target as being the leader of her alliance, or people recognizing that she was being a bit too out far in front. However, I do support Paloma and hope that she gets the help that she needs. But obviously, given that she has left the game, I can't have her too much higher than here. So she is here at number 16. And with that, there are 15 players remaining in the game. And as usual, I'll be ranking them based on how likely I think it is that they'll win the game from this point, given their current game position. But at number 15, we have the player who is the most likely person to be evicted on Thursday night. But here we have Pooch. And Pooch had a pretty notable fall from grace here, where he obviously volunteered to be put up on the block. I mean, he decided that the plan was for Taylor to be backdoored, and he was so confident that this plan was going to go through that he was willing to put himself on the block just so he can win the veto and ensure that Taylor went home. But in the process, he just completely opened up the door for the women, namely Amira, Alyssa, and Jasmine, to ultimately make him the target instead. And the fact that he wasn't really aware of this the whole time, the fact that he even allowed this to happen is pretty bad. I mean, this could go down as one of the dumbest moves in Big Brother history. The fact that he literally put himself on the block despite no one really going after him coming into the week. And obviously now he's going to be going home as a result. And yes, while we saw people like Monty and Kyle express concern about, like the girls potentially targeting the guys and wanting to put votes to keep him. I mean, I think at this point, even Monty has conceded that Pooch is a goner and there really isn't much hope for him moving forward. And obviously, this will definitely be one of the more notable downfalls in Big Brother history. And while it is shocking to see him go out in such a fashion like this, Pooch definitely came off as a more high variance player. And I wouldn't have been surprised if he had been targeted in future weeks, even if this didn't happen. I mean, he was definitely someone who was very out in front, someone who made it very blatant to a lot of the women that he wasn't as willing to work with them as he was with the guys. And through him being so willing to put himself on the block specifically to target Taylor, I mean, he pretty much voted himself out of the game. So again, it's not a great game to really assess, and it's pretty bad at the end of the day. But considering he is the most likely boot here, he is at the bottom, and because of that, he is here at number 15. Now we're moving on to number 14, and I kind of had a debate between this person and a few other people to discuss here, as I don't necessarily think this person's guaranteed to be the next boot per se, especially depending on how the next HOH goes. However, this person is definitely not in the best position right now, but here we have Turner. Admittedly, I don't think Turner's necessarily going to be the next boot per se, And even with the discussions over potential backdoor options, if Pooch were to win the veto, I mean, I don't think Turner was the more likely option there. I think they probably would have gone for Joseph, or if not that, I mean, they probably could have just bit the bullet there and voted out Taylor. So I don't think Turner was necessarily going to be screwed over if Pooch had won the veto. However, he's still going to be in a pretty bad position afterwards. I mean, again, Pooch was his closer ally there, and obviously Pooch is going out. He tried to reconcile things with Michael after Michael had turned down an alliance earlier on, but it seems like that doesn't seem to be working out super well for him, and he is pretty unaware of the Pooch plan right now. I mean, for as far as he knows, he thinks Taylor is still going to be the target. No one's really clued him in about the Pooch blind side, and yeah, he'll probably be told. However, again, it's after things are really solidified at this point. And now coming into next week, I mean, I don't think he has too many allies coming into it. I mean, it seems like his best bet at this point is working with the guys, particularly with Joseph, who is himself not in that great of a position at this point. So I feel like his position has really slid in this past week to where he's not in a great spot at this point. However, I will say that he's probably not guaranteed to be the next target per se, as I feel like people like Taylor or Monty, or heck, even Amira, depending on how the HOH goes, are probably a bit more likely to go here. But even then, there are plenty of people that do want to take him out before jury, so it's not a great spot for Turner to be in. However, he can definitely benefit from a good HOH result, whether it's through himself or someone like a Monty winning HOH. So I do think there are opportunities for him to skate on by and for him to move up on this power ranking. However, at this current point, he is in a pretty bad spot. So because of that, I did decide to put him here at number 14. Now we're moving on to number 13, and we have someone who is arguably in a worse spot than Turner right now, in the sense that they are more likely to be targeted coming into next week. However, I do have a bit more confidence in their ability to shake things up if they were to get HOH or even have a favorable HOH result. But here we have Monty. And I'll say up front that I did overestimate Monty in my power ranking last week. I thought he was in a much better position than I thought he was. Now, to be fair, he did make a lot of mistakes that caused his position to crumble since the previous HOH result happened. However, it's still not great for him moving forward. I mean, he obviously came into the week as a part of Mamba, and he was arguably pretty well positioned, being a part of Mamba, but also being part of the Oasis. However, he ultimately decided to take the driver's seat there and really go against what some people wanted by trying to include Nicole there. Now, obviously including Nicole kind of makes sense on paper in the sense that you're adding people to your alliance, trying to secure the numbers per se, but he did this without including Daniel, someone who was clearly a close ally of Nicole at this point. I mean, pretty much the entire house knew that Daniel and Nicole were a very close duo at that point. And him deciding to include Nicole without Daniel just guaranteed that she would go to Daniel and leak this alliance, which obviously she ends up doing. So that alone isn't particularly great. There were even some people within Mamba that didn't want Nicole or Daniel to be included in there, but that's just how it was. Afterwards, he really doesn't manage Nicole well at all, to where he tries to present it as if Nicole was part of this group that was coming together spontaneously, and sort of downplaying the fact that that the alliance was already there and that she was really just going to be Paloma's replacement, which again she was. But then he accidentally leaks to Nicole that Nicole is basically the new member of the alliance and that she was basically at the bottom, which just opened up the door for Nicole to really come in and really infiltrate a lot of those groups there to really undermine Monty, which she ends up doing. She obviously connects well with Amira and a lot of the women there. She obviously connects with Jasmine as well. And through that, they're basically able to hijack control of the alliance from Monty. They obviously put up Pooch, which is something he didn't want to do. He tried to make it very clear that he wanted to vote to keep Pooch in order to maintain his alliances there. But again, the process just contributes to this divide there. And it's really through his own fault of including Nicole in the alliance to begin with that allowed all the control in the game to really be sapped away from him. And plus, he does get kind of unlucky that Taylor sticks around in the game, someone who perceived him to be part of the reason why she ended up on the outs there. And he really makes zero effort to really reconnect with Taylor. And in the process of doing so, really contributes to this conflict as well, to where Taylor is actively going after him. Now, it's not as if this was necessarily inevitable. I mean, Taylor talked about wanting to work with Monty before, but through completely icing her and just refusing to give her a chance, I mean, he basically made it a self fulfilling prophecy that Taylor would end up going after him. So, through all these developments, I mean, his position has really deteriorated in recent days. And now, even people like Kyle, someone who was perceived as being close with him, even he is starting to distance himself from Monty, recognizing that he's kind of a sinking ship, and now we have people talking about targeting him relatively soon. I mean, obviously Taylor's going after him, but now even a lot of the women are kind of facilitating this to where a lot of the women are talking about throwing the next HOH to Taylor specifically to go after, if not Monty, then one of the guys, people that are closer to Monty. So really, he has really fallen from grace here. And now coming into this next week, I mean, he is going to be in quite a bit of danger to where even if Taylor doesn't win HOH, I mean, there are people that wouldn't mind seeing Monty go before jury at this point, and they kind of see him as being at the center of the law, this gender divide that's kind of taken over the house in recent days. So really, Monty's in quite a bit of danger here. And that's obviously that's part of the reason why I really dropped them in this power ranking this past week. So it's not looking great for him at this point. And based on the gameplay that he demonstrated, I feel like some of that is his own fault as well, and probably doesn't reflect well on him as a player. So obviously none of those things are great. However, I will say that he definitely has potential to recover from this, particularly if he ends up winning HOH. And I feel like even if like him or Joseph win HOH, it can definitely try to blow the game open to a degree to where he could definitely get back into control per se. Now, whether he can do that obviously depends on certain factors. And even if he does, I mean, is he really going to be the one that wins the game? I mean, I'm not entirely sure about that. So again, it's sort of a really mixed bag for Monty, and obviously a lot can change between now. I mean, as I said, the game is very fluid. However, if we're looking at where things currently stand, I mean, I don't have too much confidence in Monty right now, and plus he's in a pretty bad position. So because of that, I do have him here at number 13. Now we're moving on to number 12, and I kind of struggled with where to put this person. I mean, they kind of been all over the place, and I do question what their longevity is at this point. But here we have Taylor. And Taylor's hard to assess because on one hand, I feel like in recent days, like the target has kind of shifted from her to where people aren't as readily ready to target her and vote her out. And we do know that there are people that are willing to, if not align with her, at least use her for the time being. And, that's a double-edged sword in that on one hand, she is allowed to get pretty further into the game. However, it's also pretty evident that no one actually plans on taking her to the end, even with all that stuff happening, because we obviously see the women see her as a viable option, not because they necessarily want to align with her, but because they see her as someone that wants to go after the guys, namely people like a Joseph, a Turner, a Pooch, and obviously a Monty as well. But in recent days, we also saw people like a Kyle and a Michael really consider using her as well, pulling her into the secret alliance. And admittedly, that latter part is part of the reason why I did decide to move her up a couple spots, in the sense that she at least has a group that could potentially elevate her in the game, more so because if it's an actual alliance than because they're just using her to target specific people. Now, granted, I don't think she even has a final two, so again, even her position, if she were to ride that out, probably isn't great either way, so there's that to consider. But obviously, she came into the week as someone that people were looking to target. I mean, heck, we even saw Pooch go as far as to volunteer to put himself on the block specifically to have her backdoored. And while the women consider that to a degree, I mean, Jasmine was one of her worst case scenarios. And yet, even by the end of that, Jasmine did come around to wanting to keep Taylor and to work with the woman, use Taylor as a way to go after a lot of these guys moving forward. So there's at least that to consider. And I feel like coming the next week, I mean, yeah, there are probably people that would target her, namely a Monty. However, I feel like most people, if they were to win HOH, they probably would try to potentially target other people instead. And I feel like the people that are going to target her are in the minority right now. So there's at least that to consider. But at the end of the day, I can't have her too high because I don't feel like she has much of an end game right now. I mean, again, even the people that want to work with her, they don't actually want to take her that deep into the game. They just want her to win HOH so that they can go after the bigger targets so that they can dominate the game and then throw her out at the first opportunity. So I can't really justify her putting her too much higher than this. However, it's the fact that she at least has somewhat of a path forward that does allow me to put her here at number 12. Now we're moving on to number 11, and we have someone who probably is pretty minor within the game, but is someone who I do still worry quite a bit about. And here we have Brittany. And I really penalized Brittany a lot last week for her throwing Amira on the bus and really turning a lot of the women against her. And so far this week, I don't really feel like she's done that much to really address that. I mean, we've heard people like Amira get, again, further sketched out by her by the fact that she's talking with Joseph and she's talking with like people like a Michael trying to work with the guys, really undermining her trust with a lot of the women there. And I feel like through that, she is on the outs there, and I feel like people don't really want to work with her. I mean, heck, even her closest ally, Michael, is someone who, one, has a lot more options within the game than working with Brittany, but also recognizes that Brittany is probably not the most reliable ally either, and he's really trying to manage like the amount of information that she gets and stuff like that. So I feel like Brittany is someone who probably isn't poised well to do well within the game. However, she does at least have Michael willing to work with her, and we do have that potential Outsiders alliance that's coming together that would include her along with Kyle and potentially Taylor. So that is at least an avenue for her to get deeper into the game, especially that group ends up coming into power. However, again, she is someone who probably doesn't have too much respect within the game. I can't really see her winning a jury vote at the end of the day, and I can't really see her being too much higher than this. However, it's the fact that she's probably one of the less likely people to be targeted immediately. I mean, it's not as if she's completely safe. However, there are definitely bigger fish to fry right now. That does lead me to have her a little bit higher at number 11. Now we're moving on to number 10, and I kind of thought this person would be towards the bottom with a lot of the people that you'd lump him in with. However, I do think this person has a bit more potential coming into it the following weeks, but here we have Joseph. And Joseph's weird because he is someone who was a potential backdoor target coming into this week. And even now, like, I mean, a lot of the women, when they're saying they're going after the guys, they kind of want to target Joseph coming into it, which isn't ideal. And I feel like that was part of the reason why I considered putting him much lower on this list. And I'm sure even some people would think that he should probably be even lower than this. However, I do think there are potential options for him moving forward. I mean, not necessarily in terms of alliances, but I do think he could potentially win an HOH. I feel like people like Monty or Taylor could become bigger targets than him to where he could definitely escape by. And I do feel like in recent days, we've seen people like a Brittany talk game with him and be willing to work with him moving forward. So I do think there are options for Joseph to slip under the radar. However, he's still not in the best position. I mean, he's still not fully clued into the Pooch blindside that's about to happen. So because of that, I can't have him too much higher, and he's here at number 10. Now we're moving on to number 9, and this person's very similar to Joseph as well, but here we have Indy, and Indy has been pretty passive as well. And I kind of can't believe this person is this high as well, because again, there are people who are considering targeting her. I mean, heck, a lot of the women, namely people like Amira, want to target her pre-jury as she isn't really reliable within the game. And plus they don't like that she talked about wanting to take Monty to the end or whatever. So again, it's not a super great position for Indy. And realistically, the fact that she even is this high, probably, I don't know if that's necessarily the correct call, but considering that I feel like the people below her are in more danger of going home next week than someone like an Indy, does make me want to put her a little bit higher. However, I should stress that she probably isn't long for the game anyway. So because of that, I do have her here at number 9. Now we're moving on to number 8, and I feel somewhat confident about this person's longevity. However, their actual win equity is a bit suspect. But here we have Terrence. And I feel like now that Terrence has survived the block, I feel like he's a pretty low priority at this point. I mean, no one's really going after him. No one's super incentivized to take out Terrence anytime soon. And I feel like considering the fact that there are other people that are at greater risk of going home in the next couple weeks, I feel like that kind of elevates Terrence to a degree here. Now, I do think he gets pretty lucky with the fact that Paloma left the game, which canceled the twist, as I feel like he would have been in quite a bit of danger had he had to compete in that competition. Now, again, who knows what could have happened there, but I don't have the greatest confidence that Terrence would have done super well in that competition there. But now that, again, he survived and now he is kind of coasting through the game. Now, I don't think he's super active at the end of the day, and I can't really see people rewarding him too much. However, he has sort of gotten into a good position to a degree. I mean, the guys seem pretty fine with him for the most part. We obviously know that he is associated with a lot of the older people that could lead to something. And I don't really see anyone going after him. However, I feel like a lot of his position on this list is elevated by the fact that other people are at greater risk going home soon. Whereas I feel like Terrence, even if he is going to get deeper into the game, probably isn't the most likely option to actually win it, even if he were to get to the end. But it's the fact that he is relatively safe for the time being that does lead me to put him here at number 8. Now we're moving on to number 7, and we actually have the current HOH, and here we have Jasmine. And I feel like Jasmine has been playing her HOH a bit better than someone like a Daniel. I feel like she has kind of gotten into a better position largely due to people like Amira really getting into her ear about like the women working together and targeting Pooch. Now, I don't love the way that she's been going about a lot of her early HOH, particularly with the fact that she really struggled with whether to actually go along with the Pooch plan or whether to stick to her guns and target Taylor, thinking that's what the house wanted, and also the fact that she just doesn't really like Taylor all that much. However, Amira was able to convince her to go along with the Pooch plan, and she did ultimately get into an alliance with like Alyssa, Amira, Daniel, and Nicole there, so I feel like that is something that could propel her moving forward. Now, I do question how well she'll actually do beyond that point. I'm not entirely sure she's super well positioned within that configuration per se, and I don't feel like she is someone who has the best perception at this point. I mean, I know even people that she's aligned with feel like she is someone who doesn't take the game that seriously and that she's someone who has been lying and deceiving, when in reality, she definitely has a lot of trouble like managing what she wants within the game. I mean, even when she was going back and forth between Pooch and Taylor, I think that really showed a level of struggling for her to calculate what's best for her game there, like, and what she even wants to do within the game. And I feel like that is a flaw that could really harm her like chances of making the optimal move moving forward and really harm her chances of actually winning the game. So Jasmine is a very much a mixed bag for me. I don't think she necessarily played exceptionally well on her HOH, but I do think she was slightly more active than someone like a Daniel in getting herself into an alliance and ultimately making a strategic decision in who to target. So I do have her a bit higher at number 7. Now we're moving on to number 6, and we actually have someone very similar to Jasmine, and it's actually the previous HOH, and here we have Daniel. Now I did criticize Daniel quite a bit for his HOH reign in the sense that I don't feel like he was super active within the game, and I very much questioned his position within a lot of the alliances that he was in. And sure enough, that the alliance that he found himself in, kind of with Oasis, ended up crumbling by the end of the week. And he didn't really do much to really stop it. I mean, he obviously had his alliance with Pooch and Turner, but obviously with Pooch going out the door, I mean, he's going to be losing that. And at this point, I feel like he is kind of largely aligned with Nicole. He was excluded from like the Bleep Alliance that Monty put together, I mean, in favor of Nicole. But even then, Nicole was able to really break up that group due to like Nicole getting in and really dictating who to target, really divided Monty and Kyle in terms of whether the Pooch plan would be good for their games. And I do feel like that does kind of benefit Daniel to a degree. Now, obviously, he was largely uninvolved in that process. I feel like Nicole was far more involved in doing that, but he does kind of benefit from it by being included in this new alliance. I mean, there's obviously talk of this alliance with him, Nicole, Jasmine, Alyssa, and Amira that could lead to something in the future, depending on how future HOHs go. And also, I do have to give him some credit in the sense that despite him nominating 3 people in the first week and none of them going home, you know, like he is a pretty low priority to be targeted at this point. I mean, no one's really talking about going after him. Now, granted, I think a lot of that is because he is kind of a non-threat within the game, and I feel like other people have been more active than he is. So I do question his win equity as well. I feel like him and Jasmine are kind of on a similar boat. However, I feel like the fact that Daniel does have more close allies, and I feel like Daniel is someone who could potentially turn it up later on, depending on how things go, does give me a bit more confidence in him to actually win the game than someone like a Jasmine at this point. So because of that, I do have him here at number 6. Now we're moving on to number 5, and I wish I could put this person higher. However, I do worry that this person could be a target within the next couple of weeks, depending on how the HOH goes. But here we have Amira. And I really do like the way Amira is playing this game. Now, is she perfect? No. However, I do appreciate how active she has been over the course of the week, where I feel like she was a pretty big force in influencing Jasmine to target Pooch over Taylor, despite Jasmine really thinking that it was probably in her best interest to go after Taylor. She was able to effectively convince Jasmine that Taylor could be used to go after the guys, which I do give Amira quite a bit of credit for. And plus, like she does seem to have plenty of good relationships. I mean, she is close to Nicole at this point. She was able to be effective in shifting the core power structure away from Monty to a large degree. And she does have a potential new alliance with Alyssa, Daniel, Jasmine, and Nicole. I feel like with the Bleep alliance and Postback falling apart, I feel like that could lead to her like giving her a safety option moving forward. So I do give Amira quite a bit of credit for that. However, the main problem with Amira is that she isn't entirely safe in the future. I mean, if people like a Turner or a Monty win the next HOH, I feel like they could go after Amira as they recognize that she's sort of the leader of this women's alliance, or at least the leader of this gender divide to go after the men so that the women will have a better shot of winning. And obviously that's not great from a threat perception standpoint. I mean, the fact that there are people that see her as the leader of this effort isn't ideal. And the fact that she wanted to take along people like Kyle and Monty deeper into the game, only for them to really question their allegiance to this alliance, is not the best at the end of the day. And I do kind of worry that if she gets a bad HOH, that she'll probably be, if not out the door, then in a lot of trouble. So that is enough to keep her outside the very top of the list, but I was impressed enough by her gameplay over the course of this week to where I do consider her one of the better players in the game right now. So because of that, I do have her here at number 5. Now we're moving on to number 4, and we have a player who's kind of similar to Amira in a lot of ways based on their gameplay from this week, but here we have Nicole. And I feel like Nicole has been pretty effective as well, particularly in getting Daniel back into the majority after it seemed like Daniel was pretty much an outsider for a lot of the game. I mean, she obviously is included into the Bleep Alliance of Pros Pack by Monty, and the fact that she was able to then go to Daniel and sort of leak that information to him really helped kickstart this effort to undermine that majority alliance and really crack that alliance. Obviously, she later talks to Monty again, and Monty kind of exposes the fact that she was going to be at the bottom of Pose Pack, which really influenced her to go around and really bond with new people, particularly Amira, Jasmine. And by the end of the week, with Monty like really sinking his own ship there, it seems like Nicole was in a position to really benefit from a lot of this. And she ultimately is effective at getting into this new alliance with people like an Alyssa, a Daniel, a Jasmine as well. So I do feel like Nicole is in a better spot than she was a week ago. And I do feel like a lot of that is sort of manifesting after what I said last week with her having potential. Now, again, similar to Amira, I do kind of worry about what could happen if someone like a Monty ends up winning HOH next week. I mean, do they go after Nicole per se? I don't think they'll go after Nicole per se. I feel like Amira is higher on their priority list. However, it's that prospect that does make me a bit worried about her moving forward. And I feel like we definitely need to see more from her in terms of her getting into a better position than what she is right now. But I do feel confident enough in her to have her here at number 4. Now we're moving on to number 3, and I've been pretty impressed by how this person's been playing so far. And while they aren't completely safe moving forward, I feel like they're definitely not going to be targeted within the next week. But here we have Kyle. And I feel like Kyle has been playing a bit more actively this week. Now, he does do a number of things, like he does get closer to Michael to a degree, which does eventually culminate in him building this Outsiders alliance with him, Michael, Brittany, and possibly Taylor, depending on how the next HOH goes, but there's that at least. Like there's also been talk about him and Monty trying to flip the vote into Pooch, and, they were unsuccessful in that effort, but again, Monty is the one who has been more out in front and is definitely someone who's going to be targeted over a Kyle per se, so there's that. Now, I don't love how people are still lumping him in with one of these bigger guys. There is still talk about him potentially being targeted moving forward, so that's not particularly great. Although, again, I feel like, unlike all the other guys we talked about on this list, I feel like he's less likely to be targeted than any of those guys we just mentioned. I also feel like he could greatly benefit from winning HOH. He could definitely shift things in his favor, per se, so there's that. And I do like that he at least recognizes that, like, keeping Taylor around to target the guys doesn't bode super well for him, even if it's not an immediate thing that could backfire on him per se. So again, we'll have to see where that goes. However, I feel like of the guys, he's definitely in one of the better positions within the house. I mean, people still really like him quite a bit. He has a number of crucial relationships that could allow him to really be in a lot of control within the game moving forward. And that's something I do appreciate. And we obviously saw him do pretty well in the competition this past week. Again, he was technically throwing the HOH as he didn't really need to win it, but we saw him go against Turner in the first part of the HOH and then dominate there. So again, he is someone who I have a lot of confidence in moving forward. However, it's the fact that he isn't completely safe and probably isn't in the best position at the current moment that does lead me to put him here at number 3. Now we're moving on to number 2, and we have someone who, again, I feel like has been pretty well positioned for a lot of this early game here. And while they haven't been the most active player, I feel like they definitely have quite a bit of potential moving forward. But here we have Alyssa. And as I said last week, I mean, I had her at number 1, which probably wasn't the best decision in the world given everything that we know. However, the main reason I had her that high is that I feel like no one's really going after her at this point, and that's something that really makes me want to put her highly on this list, is the fact that, again, she is pretty good with a lot of the house, and she hasn't really done anything to make herself much of a target. Plus, she has a number of good relationships. I mean, she obviously is pretty close to Kyle. She was a crucial member of the Bleep Alliance, maybe not the most active member, but definitely a crucial member there. And with that starting to fracture and fall apart, I mean, no one's really seeing her as the main orchestrator of the women's movement per se. And she is talked about being included in certain alliances. I mean, she's obviously included in the alliance that Daniel and Nicole are proposing putting together. And she also has a very good relationship with Kyle. And while she isn't discussed as an immediate person to include within the outsiders, I could see Kyle really pushing to include her into that if that ends up becoming a thing later on. So I feel like those are things that could definitely benefit her. And I feel like through that, she is in a pretty strong position, not to mention her losing Paloma, which I do think was probably a net positive for her at the end of the day, as admittedly they weren't that close by the time Paloma left the game, but I feel like people could have perceived them as a duo and targeted either her or Alyssa, like had things gone south in that direction and had Paloma won a competition that could have led Alyssa to go out instead. So I feel like losing Paloma was probably a net positive at the end of the day. And I feel like Alyssa is just very well positioned right now. Now, again, she isn't the most active player, and I feel like that is the biggest knock I can give her right now. However, considering it's still pretty early on, and considering the fact that I do think she has potential to really step it up later on, I do still have a lot of confidence in her. And with her seeming to have quite a bit of safety coming into the next couple of weeks, I do feel like she has opportunities to do so. So because of that, I do have her here at number 2. And now at number 1, the person I think is the most likely to win Big Brother 24 right now is Michael. And I feel like Michael is up here because right now, at least, he is the best positioned person in the house. And really, it's not even close right now. I mean, he was a member of the Pose Pack Alliance for the longest time. And even with that starting to fall apart, I mean, with his gender divide seeming to form over a lot of the house, I mean, no one really sees him as a guy's guy, to where like none of the guys are going after him, but also none of the women really see him as a guy's that needs to be targeted before the jury. So there's that. And he has pretty good relationships with a lot of people in the house, particularly with people like a Brittany and Taylor. He's one of the few people in the house that actively wants to work with Taylor and is someone who is open to doing that. He is someone who recognizes the value in perpetuating this gender divide dynamic, and that it really gives him a lot of safety moving forward and could benefit a lot from having a secret alliance, which he is pretty active in forming. He obviously has a pretty close relationship with Kyle, which has kind of blossomed over the last week. And now there's talk about this Outsiders Alliance forming, which could really benefit his game moving forward. Although, again, he is essentially in the middle of the house right now. He is someone who has a lot of relationships in the game right now, and is someone who, no, again, no one is really going after. And unlike someone like an Alyssa, I feel like Michael has been more active in managing his relationships and getting himself into this strong position. Now, there are still plenty of question marks over how long he can really sustain it. I mean, I think something that didn't particularly help him was the fact that he won the veto this last week. Again, he's now won 2 vetoes in a row. He's won the most competitions out of everyone in the house so far, which could paint a target on his back later on. And considering the fact that he ultimately doesn't even use the veto, like making it so that he didn't really need to win it, I mean, that's not something that bodes well for him moving forward. I mean, he essentially has won 2 competitions at this point. Now, granted, no one's really talked too much about that this week, although that could be a point of discussion in future weeks, especially if he continues to win more competitions moving forward. So look out for that at least. But at this current moment, he is in the best position right now, and he has a lot of options moving forward. And I feel like the way he goes about that could really dictate the rest of his game. And I feel like based on what he's demonstrated so far, I feel like I have the most confidence in him to make the correct decision right now. So again, a lot can change between now and next week, and really weeks beyond this. However, for right now, I feel like Michael is in the best position, and because of that, he is here at number 1. And there we go, that will do it for this week's video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe, it really helps out with the channel. Obviously, I'll be back again next week to update the power rankings once again. I'll be back later this week to update the power rankings for Survivor SA now that that season started. A lot of fun stuff happening there. And also, if you haven't already, be sure to join my Discord server. I'll leave a link to join in the description. A lot of good stuff there. But for now, that is the video. See ya.